Hello, I am Nurbek Savitakhunov. It is Saturday, September 29th, and you're watching news from Kazakhstan. Around 500 Monai field service employees in Zhanaozen held a rally on Friday demanding payment of their services. Management of the company, which is Ozen Monai Gas's subcontractor, says they are experiencing temporary financial difficulties and promised to pay off their debts until the end of the year.
In no way this is a political conflict. It is just a labor dispute between the employer and employees. Taught by their bitter past experience of Zhanaozen strikes, oil workers say this is not a political conflict, but rather a labor dispute. This time it involves Monai Field Service, a contractor company working on the maintenance of oil wells. The dispute has lasted for almost half a year, with Monai Field Service not paying salaries on time since May 2012. That is when the labor union developed a new collective agreement and is now trying to negotiate it with the company's management. The workers then decided to hold their first protest, partially managing to improve the situation with wages and working conditions. This is the protest action in question. The executive director, Daulet Galiyev, assures the workers that everything will be fine. The management is taking necessary measures to resolve the problems and that there are contracts in place until the end of the year so nobody will be laid off. Local authorities interfered in the affairs of the private company and managed to localize one source of potential social conflict. People were no longer threatened with dismissals. Immediately another problem emerged. The late salary payments became systematic, workers say. We have nowhere to go. What are we going to tell these people? The response we received is not sufficient. People are not prepared to work for free. As of Friday, over 500 workers of Monai Field Service stopped working until the company pays them salary arrears. Workers claim they were fooled. None of the conditions of the collective agreement have been met by the company owners. Moreover, they do not know who they work for and who are the founders of the enterprise. Any attempt to meet and talk to the management ends in failure. On Friday, the newly hired chief yet again failed to answer the questions of the mutinous employees. The company used to be highly profitable, but now we are almost bankrupt. We are indebted to Kafkaneft, Basaktau, Associate Plus, everyone. Even the payroll accounts are frozen. We now only pay salaries without any bonuses, and even this we do based on the prosecutor's office orders, as our accounts do not do payrolls. It is processed by the court-martials. We did go through one audit, but I do not know where the money earned by workers went. I really do not know. As for the founder of the company, I know only one name really, Andrei Sidov, nothing more than that. And yes, it is a Russian company. Some workers believe that Andrei Sidov might just be a man of straw since nobody saw him in all 8 years of the company's existence. People are now ready to continue working without extra pay, but they cannot understand how a company working in such profitable business can go suddenly bankrupt. Of course, it is easier to sell the enterprise and reopen it under a different name than pay millions in salaries. And of course, we are concerned of what will happen to us in the next few months. In the meantime, Zhanaozen's mayor, Serik Baytrumov, who also took part in the talks, had to admit their failure. And perhaps that is why the administrator of the town with constant oilman rallies no longer has anything to say but, "You guys should go to work. A man's got to work."
As was reported closer to midnight on Friday, the workers of Monai Field Service Company were able to achieve the implementation of their demands partially. On Friday evening, the leadership of the company paid August's salary in full. This was reported to Stan KZ by the chairman of Monai Field Service Labor Union, Ahmet Suirkhanov. Employees dispersed and expressed willingness to work. A short strike was also held earlier by workers from India at the Kazakhstan mine after the fight with Kazakh oilmen. The website Respublika reports the clash ignited at lunchtime after an ordinary household dispute.
Kazakh employee wanted to take a spoon, but his co-worker from India aggressively stepped in his way. Without hesitation, the citizen of Kazakhstan punched his foe, drawing other workers into the fight. 40% of all people employed by Agip at Kashagan oil field are citizens of India and Philippines. They are hired since locals work in 4-week shifts and need to be paid travel expenses, whereas foreigners are ready to stay on the island without leave for as long as half a year.
In other news, defendants Akjanat Aminov and Serik Sapargali spoke at the trial in Aktau on Friday. They are accused of igniting social hatred and calling for the overthrow of constitutional order. Both defendants fully admitted their guilt and asked the court to take their admission into account in carrying out the verdict.
Aminov told the court that he actively participated in Zhanaozen events, organized a meeting and encouraged oil workers to show up there. He also called others not to stop the strike and remain at the square until their demands are fulfilled, sticking to their claims. Aminov appealed to the court to take his health condition into consideration, saying that he regretted what he had done. Similarly, public activist Serik Sapargali asked the court to take his health condition into account as well. Sapargali denied the information published last week by a Kazinform agency that he admitted being a part of the criminal group under the guidance of Vladimir Kozlov, Alga party party leader. The public activist added that he regrets his words spoken in December, which might have somehow influenced oil workers on strike. The lawyers of both defendants asked the court to take into account their confessions and pass a reasonable verdict. After lunch, Alexei Plugov, the lawyer of Vladimir Kozlov, took the floor. He tried to prove the innocence of the politician, explaining it to the court that the investigation was considering the case only based on prosecution position and never looked at facts that proved the innocence of the defendants. I've said this before, the trial must stop and Kozlov, Aminov and Sapargali should be freed right in the courtroom. I think that representatives of the government are responsible for what had happened, and they are the ones who must be held accountable and punished for what they did.
In another trial, Serik Baymagambetev's defense team petitioned to change his sentence to house arrest due to the former customs head's worsening condition. Lawyers say the official has hepatitis. Doctors recommend hospitalization.
The prosecutor objected to the motion, saying that the former customs chief is accused of committing a serious crime based on 23 volumes of the criminal case, which implies 10 to 15 years in prison. The prosecution stressed that considering the charges, the restraint measure cannot be changed to a house arrest. The judge decided against an immediate ruling and postponed the decision until the next hearing and proceeded to the questioning of witnesses, including the driver of Serik Baymagambetov. According to investigators, Baymagambetov, accused of taking $80,000 bribe, abused the office while providing patronage for his driver and his son. As noted by the prosecutor, the driver was assigned to two departments, the President's Garage and the Astana Department of Customs. Allegedly assisted by the former head of the Customs Control Committee, the driver's son was first appointed to the Ministry of Internal Affairs and then transferred to Customs Control Committee as a senior specialist when his boss moved there.
Three major extremist organizations of the Salafite movement are active in Atyrau, says the region's only independent newspaper, Akjai. According to the publication, these radical groups have been working in the region since 2003.
The newspaper's source of the detailed information about the movement of Salafis is not disclosed. However, it presented specific facts and information previously unknown to the general public. Journalists linked the onset of extremist groups' activities in Atyrau region with the arrival of Shymkent theologian Abdijapar Abdikhali back in 2003, who settled in the central mosque's madrasa. His successor was Mullah Makulbekov Mayrambek, a man involved in the international organization Union of Islam Jihadists. In 2008, 9 members of the mosque Ak Takao founded Kazakh Organization of Islam Jihadists. In recent years, the organization has dramatically increased the number of their supporters. At the same time, 52 individuals were convicted for terrorism activities and sentenced up to 12 years in prison this spring alone. 9 founders of KIG, Kazakh Islamic Jihad, have created 3 independent terrorist cells, Ittihad al-Muslimin, Desyatka and Gruppa Li. In between 2008 and 2011, all 9 founders of KIG have left Kazakhstan, mainly as mercenaries to Afghan province of northern Waziristan, where in the summer of 2011 they joined the international terrorist organization Junt al-Khalifat, Caliphate Soldiers, and continued guiding their cells in Atyrau from abroad.
In Pavlodar, almost 60 Department of Internal Affairs officers will be dismissed after an unscheduled recertification.
Over 2,500 policemen passed the exams in the region. The most important thing for the accreditation committee to check was officers' proficiency, their adherence to anti-corruption legislation and physical state. The majority of the policemen passed the accreditation, although several people were still recommended for dismissal, but none among senior staff.
We're
talking about officers from the regional departments of internal affairs, including personnel of rural district departments and city departments, among which there are patrolmen, authorized officers, youth liaison officers and regular policemen.
On Friday, activist Bolotbek Bilalov was released in Astana after an unsanctioned rally at the city administration doors held on September 25th. He was greeted by his colleagues and followers.
Cake flowers and posters signed "Freedom" were awaiting the human rights activists at the gates of the detention center. Bolotbek Bilalov spent 3 days behind bars for holding an unsanctioned protest action, "The Smagambetov Please Don't Leave." The protesters were residents of the apartment building located on Ondiris 1, planned for demolition to allow the transfer of the land plot for the construction of the new thermal power plant. Speaking about the conditions of detention, the human rights activist smiled and noted that the food was fine and there was nothing major to complain about. The police only warned him that next time a similar action could lead to a criminal case. Therefore, Bilalov is now looking for alternative solutions, but still doesn't exclude the option of resorting to extreme measures. I believe we will seek a compromise with the authorities. As I said before, we don't want to see them as enemies. However, if they want compromise and consider us enemies, then we're ready to take extreme measures.
Former Ruhaniyat party leader Serikjan Mambitalyan expressed concern about the planned referendum on Facebook, mainly asking why the issue of the environment was left out and why is there a lack of well-known experts and politicians involved. Comments in the next report.
Former leader of the party Ruhaniyat, Serikjan Mambitalyan, raises the question of why representatives of democratic society and initiators of the referendum from Almaty and Astana were absent during the roundtable on Friday. Posting about the issue on Facebook, Mambitalyan recalls that the idea was meant to unite Democrats, but the initiative eventually backfired. Where is Zauresh Batalova, who has been speaking about the referendum since spring? What party and what association will take on these initiatives? I did not see the chairman of Social Democrats, Sharman Toyakbay, as well as communist leader Gaziz Aldamjarov or others from Azat, Ruhaniyat and Algha, some of whom are still under trial in Aktau. Without unity, we will not achieve anything. There was no reaction online, but Social Democrats presented their response earlier at a press conference, claiming the referendum is a joint initiative proposed by their Almaty colleagues. Apparently, the idea to hold a popular vote is not a party initiative, but a civic one. Therefore, only very interested individuals are taking part in the discussion. Zaurea fully supports us and sends her regards to everyone. As you can see, her last name and signature is here as well. She did not come since she is abroad. It was hard not to notice Serikjan Mambitalyan's somber mood during the discussion of the idea behind the referendum. He spoke against political integration of the Eurasian Union model, noticing that the issue of environment is a far more important topic. Mambitalyan told the proponents of the referendum that he is ready to join the initiative group if one of the questions raised will deal with the construction of a nuclear fuel bank in Uсть-Каменогорск. If they reach an agreement, an international nuclear fuel bank will be built in Uсть-Каменогорск. We will not benefit from it, and on the contrary, we will start collecting nuclear waste products from all over the world. We should start opposing it right now to avoid turning Kazakhstan into a landfill, and tomorrow it will be too late. A referendum is the only solution to this issue. At the same time, Mambitalyan was much more enthusiastic about joining Jarmanxan Toyakbay's group on holding the National Assembly. His idea of a civilian government announced this spring ended up on the agenda of the working group after a brief discussion. Why Serikjan Mambitalyan? I believe he had to take care of some business in London and Moscow, but nevertheless his idea of having a civil government gained great support today. Jarmanxan Toyakbay did not join the initiative group for organizing a referendum while remaining the proponent of the National Assembly. Meanwhile, the final list of the organization committee members and topics is yet to be finalized. The proponents of the referendum now schedule additional meetings in Astana and Almaty, while only time will show where this new initiative ends up eventually.
American journalist and media manager Carl Itzvorg quite regretfully noted Kazakh journalists' rare or entirely non-existing usage of modern internet technology and social networks after conducting a survey in one of Astana's media centers. Several of the experts' questions literally stumped the homegrown press.
Nowadays, when the internet and other technologies are widespread, the on-the-fly information delivery to the population is no longer an issue. Reporters need and should get information from social networks by using modern communication means. Doing so, you can broadcast right from location. Tell me, how often do you use Skype for recording interviews or find out something from Facebook?
Response plan that has to be filed with the federal government that says, here's what we do if this happens. So journalists should have been asking the question, what happens if there's a major spill? A huge oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that destroyed a good port.
Also on Friday, a similar issue was discussed on the capital's left bank. Deputy Chief of Staff Baglan Mailubayev gathered the chief editors of the Republic's media organizations in Akorda and criticized them for their poor development of content on the internet. He says most channels and newspapers' electronic versions do not withstand criticism.
Regional media outlets are much less active in the internet. Most of the regional and local newspapers don't even have their own websites, and if they start one, those often resemble front pages without much information, says Baglan Mailubayev, the former president's press secretary. Mailubayev believes internet sites must work around the clock 24/7 to promptly inform visitors about events in the country. His criticism was primarily addressed to the state-run media. There's nearly 1 billion websites on the net. The number of internet users in Kazakhstan increased to 9 million people, and there are also about 24 million mobile service subscribers with their tablets and smartphones. Nowadays, every journalist can run a personal blog, and if independent media is very active in this regard, the state-run media is exactly the opposite.
Государственные СМИ, к сожалению, не всегда проявляют такую активность.
Meanwhile, the well-known Panorama Business Weekly has stopped operation. The newspaper team is unwilling to comment on the situation. However, according to experts, the owners of the outlet are experiencing financial difficulties. Almaty TV channel is also experiencing troubles with personnel, where journalists are leaving en masse. On Friday, it was revealed that another outlet stopped its operation as well. What is going on with mass media in Kazakhstan is explored in the next report.
The editorial staff of the Business Weekly publication Panorama was sent to an unpaid holiday. The last edition came out yesterday. There wasn't a word as to why the paper will no longer be published. The journalists refused to comment on the news, and the phone of the chief editor, Lera Tsoy, was turned off all day. Sooner or later, I'll need to look for a new job. The question is where to find it. But this is a question that I'll consider later. In the next few days, I'm going to take an advantage of a really beautiful weather. I'll take a couple of bottles of white wine, an interesting book, and go walk around the central Almaty cemetery. Vyacheslav Abramov, the head of the Kazakh representative office of Freedom House, likes the sense of humor of the observer Razumov. The media expert was not at all surprised to learn that Panorama was closed down. He says that publication was long been experiencing financial problems. He also notes that this is one of the oldest newspapers in independent Kazakhstan that had received numerous awards. Abramov is certain that it is only a high authority and the professionalism of the journalists that can save the publication. I believe that many of Kazakhstan businessmen would be willing to invest in a brand like Panorama. Panorama will continue its publications, but I cannot say how long the transition period within which there will be no publications will last. The employees from a TV channel, Almaty, will also start looking for jobs in the media market from October 1st, along with their Panorama colleagues. Yesterday, the Director General received 34 letters of resignation. The staff of the Russian and Kazakh editorial office was not happy with Sergei Kuyanov, head of administration's press secretary, influence on the broadcasting policy. Serik Sarabayev quit 2 weeks ago, when the conflict was about to break up. He says that he didn't expect that the state channel employees would be so supportive and consolidated. They say that we are opposition members. The politics in Kazakhstan has reached a level when we are considered opposition for giving peace of our mind to Kuyanov. This is a real shame for our politics. Why can't we voice our views? Why can't we stick up for ourselves? A similar incident already occurred with Serik Sarabayev's team. He, together with the reporters, left the 31st channel in 2009. The editor doesn't regret taking that decision again. The conflict at the Almaty TV station has shed light on the life of state media, media supporters say. It has long become common that officials influence the editorial policy. The constitution doesn't shield the Kazakh press from censorship either. What has happened is absolutely outrageous, and it is not because of the way the head of the administration press secretary treats the journalists. It is because it has long become common. The situation is similar in all the regions. The press service is certain that they can dictate to journalists things they can and can't talk about. The days in late September were sad for local mass media. Yesterday, one more publication received its piece of bad news. The website gulzhan.org closed down due to financial causes. The journalists have not been informed how long they'll remain to be unemployed.
The state program Affordable Housing 2020 promises to resolve housing issues. The construction of the first apartment block under the program was launched in Almaty. The project is financed by the welfare fund Samruk Kazana. These new square meters are designed for families of average income.
The new residential complex consists of 9 9-floor apartment buildings. The price per square meter in the apartment, with the basic interior decoration, will be set at $1,200. For instance, a studio apartment will cost $40,000, and the largest apartment with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room will cost around $80,000. The apartments are planned to be sold online to avoid corruption. It is also important to avoid past mistakes when low prices reflected the poor quality of construction. Samruk Kazana is planning to finish and put in commission the building in 2 years and tying the construction costs to the national currency, therefore avoiding the fluctuation of foreign exchange rates. Currently, there are over 100 construction projects across Kazakhstan run by the Real Estate Fund. Now we're in selection process, but we will work in the regions where we have trusted business partners. We have already selected several projects. Every day we meet with investors and private construction companies that want to work with us, and we're open for cooperation.
Will there be a second wave of financial crisis, and how will it reflect Kazakhstan? These questions are being raised not only by experts and economists, but also by ordinary citizens. Out of fear of being left with nothing, people follow the changing oil prices, exchange rates, and other indicators. What will happen with the economy in the future is investigated next.
Режем баклажан на 3 части.
I cut the eggplant in 3 pieces and put 1 piece in the refrigerator, 1 on the windowsill and 1 on the balcony. The same way I store my money in 3 different currencies, irrespective of whether there is a crisis or not.
Есть ли кризис в стране или в мире, или его нет?
By keeping his money in dollars, euros and tenges, economist Kairat Kabulov manages to secure his funds against crisis for a few years now. He is cautious not to lose everything if the worst-case scenario comes to life. That is why he monitors websites, reads expert forecasts and follows stock market.
В принципе, получая ежемесячно.
This is of interest for any resident of our country. We get the utility bills every month and see that some service fees are rising.
Все-таки услуги со временем дорожают.
While utilities are getting more expensive, oil prices are going down for the 4th week in a row. The latest price for Brent oil is $118 per barrel. Western experts are alarmed. The world is on the brink of the new financial crisis. But some people say that if it's bad for the West, it is nothing for Kazakhstan. Oil prices will definitely stay over $100 per barrel. The midterm prognosis so far is to settle at $100 to $130 mark. But when the military operation commences, the price will climb.
начале военной операции мы увидим и выше котировки.
We are still going through the period of global instability. Kazakhstan economy is generally stable as long as oil prices are high. Countries of the customs union with energy reserves, and Kazakhstan in particular, are going to do better than other states without such reserves. Starting next year, the demand for energy resources will be stable and members of the union will start getting their dividends. Still, it would be wrong to link oil prices and the level of economic development, explains economist Kanat Birintayev. All oil income, excluding export duties, go directly to Samruk-Kazanan National Welfare Fund, which serves as a piggy bank of sorts. There is also a certain insurance. The 2013 budget is based on the oil price of $90 per barrel, so that the price fluctuations would not reflect negatively on the state balance. Birintayev is concerned, though, that the government has already cut financing of social programs, fearing the second wave of the crisis. The Health Ministry isn't planning to increase the base salary scale for medical personnel, and the same is expected to happen with teachers and pensioners. The deterrence of salaries and social payments in general will lead to the decrease of the payment capacity at the time when utilities and transport rates are going up. The demand for locally produced customer goods will also decrease. Overall, the living standards may fall significantly. Birintayev says that checking everything against oil, people forget about other important indicators. The sharp increase in wheat prices can affect food security, especially when part of the 2012 harvest was destroyed. Village oligarchs, major wheat exporters, will only benefit from the situation, since selling wheat in the domestic market will be unprofitable and it will easily go abroad. The decrease restraining bread process will not help much, since they're always only a temporary measure. We need a monopoly on wheat exports so that only the state can do it. In this case, the state will regulate the balance. It would know about the amount of wheat produced, required for international consumption and available for trade. Right now, no one regulates the prices. Everything is based on the stock market. The only restraining factor in Kazakhstan's instability to move that much wheat, as there aren't enough wheat trucks. So far, Kazakhstan is in waiting list, say experts. The debt crisis in Europe is negatively reflecting on the economies of all countries. Forecasts for Europe get back on its feet differ widely. Some confidently claim that it will happen in early 2013, while others speak of 2014.
In the final news of the day, over 100 crimes connected to counterfeiting were reported in Pavlodar. Counterfeiters are mostly interested in producing the 2,000 tenge bill. More details next.
The age and scale of the crime varies widely. Some counterfeited the money for sale, while others for their personal needs. For instance, 3 high schoolers in Pavlodar region were detained for printing banknotes using a regular printer, each getting a 1-year suspended sentence. There were also a lot of more creative criminals, with the financial police currently investigating a case of an entire underground counterfeiting plant which distributed fakes at bus and railway stations. They were printing fake banknotes using a printer copier scanner multifunction device. They would steep the paper in the water for an hour and dry it with a hairdryer, and then put it through the print and finally apply some hairspray.
This is all we have time for now. Don't forget to watch Vlast KZ on Monday. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.